Live
And we're
from the
live
attic.
from the attic. Let's just go ahead and hit that intro.
This is not a show and might not even be a connection. Here's Judah and Guest.
It's Judah and Guest, and it's been a minute. Had some things going on in my life and the family's life, and so had to take a week off. But we're back, and back with Blackburn, Captain Blackburn.
Arr.
How are you doing, man?
Doing well.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday. It's starting to rain outside.
Oh yeah, it's raining. It's been raining hard all day here.
Has
So
It's supposed to get cold and snow,
that's
possibly.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys have any snow on the ground?
No, I mean no. We had
Hmm.
some Friday, last Friday.
Okay.
It snowed pretty. No, Thursday.
Hmm.
Thursday it
Okay.
snowed, and it stayed on the ground in my backyard for a while.
Okay.
So
Nice. Well, so I put in the little I don't know guy preview thing. I said Judah and Josh talk about the idea that we should be thinking about a particular thing this particular time. This I hate thinking. And Gordon Hackman tuned in. He said, made me laugh. He said, Scott said, how about thinking about thinking? Gordon said, I think, how we say, I spent several tens of thousands of dollars to get a piece of paper that said that I did that. I like that.
well, I mean, thinking
Mercy.
about thinking is a fun topic.
Yeah.
Metacognition is
Jim
actually a
Passett, Epiphany. What was that?
yeah.
Metacognition?
Metacognition is an interesting topic.
Hmm.
If
Well,
one's
sort
into
of.
that sort of thing.
Well, in line with that, and sort of culmination of everything we've talked about, we've we've talked a lot about curiosity. I think sort of the next step is talking about productivity and creativity. You talked about it in terms of success, right?
Well,
Uh,
before we jumped on, I said that we've talked about, or the topic of success has come
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Um, Whatever that, in a good Socratic mode, it probably behooves us at some point to define what that means, at least for us, right? I mean,
yeah.
or even even if we don't come up with a final definition, at least making a journey in that direction. Um, and
Absolutely.
like I said, I think you've used that term. Success is not a word that I don't I don't think I use it a lot, but maybe I
Hmm.
do.
I use it quite a bit.
You do,
Yeah,
which is why I was like, maybe we could talk about success
yeah. Let's
um,
that's good.
while we're thinking about thinking.
While we're thinking about thinking, how do we think about success? And I think that that does challenge me to sort of define my terms. Like you're saying, sort of Socratic method. How do we define success? Now, the key is, right, is that you don't want to be too general. Oh, and we already have a thumbs up from Jim Pass. Jim Pass, thank you for
Brother
tuning
Jim.
in. And it looks like Scott and maybe Gordon are tuning in. Um, so how do we define success? It I think it's important not to be too general, because success for me, a success for a certain group, a certain if you define it, you have to define it. I have to define it for me. I cannot
Mm.
define success for mankind, right?
Or could we?
No, I don't think we can.
Or could we come up? And I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, yeah. Could we?
Could we come
Um,
up with a broad enough definition that would cover um,
oh, Jay Nass is
everyone,
watching too. Yeah, can we? Can we?
or should
Can we
we?
have a definition? I see. That's I start off with the impetus to not, but I think it is important. I always appreciate your pushback. Could we come up with a definition of success that would apply more broadly? I just don't. I just think that would take.
That might be a
Uh,
different conversation for a different day.
I wonder if it would take a little bit of intellectual dishonesty to, or too much intellectual compromise. You know, like if we really want to get sharp with our
Mm-hmm.
definitions,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we should sharpen our scope.
We could. Um,
I think Jay kind of says what I'm. Oh, I do not like that. Let's go to the block there. Okay, success is different for different people based on their aims, and I guess that's what I'm kind of getting at. Is
well,
like,
right. So different aims, different, and we could. I don't know if we can, you know, replace success with like goal achievement.
hmm,
You know, I there is this part about wanting to come up with a broad enough definition that I don't know.
that it's not just specific
It that
to the
Yeah,
individual.
yeah. Like I do have some love for, you know, post World War II humanistic. Oh, dangerous term for some folks. Humanistic psychology. Abraham Maslow, right?
Hmm.
Carl Rogers. Um, those two gentlemen in particular. Um, you know,
Now
when
that's
we talk about
interesting.
human actualization, right? Like,
Yeah,
is success like even if I said, you know, is success,
John Crispin watching. Nice.
you know, an individual's, you know, achievement of their potential, right? I mean, and that's going to ultimately be unique to every person.
Yeah.
But then it gets even broader than simply goal achievement and, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
bringing
but
into reality what is possible.
well, that's what I was going to say. It's interesting you brought up. Oh, I got Kate Davis. So Jim says, success for a man to stand before his maker and hear, "Well done, good and faithful
Faithful
servant,"
servant. Mm-hmm.
and following. And
And
Kate says,
there's
"Isn't success about finding your purpose?" Thank you, Kate. Kate, I don't know if you've watched before, but appreciate you joining the chat. Thank you.
what's up, Kate?
You remember Kate,
I
right?
remember Kate.
Kate Davis. And I thought it was interesting that you brought up Maslow and Rogers because they were not necessarily uh, very friendly to goal achievement. It was more about the process.
They they're very process oriented, but
Hmm.
I think that that has to do with just the fact that from their perspective, they saw an issue between means and ends. That the means of becoming more human had really been skewed at that particular point in time,
Say
if
more
that makes
about that.
sense.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, so they're coming at it from, you know, an academic and to a large degree, and not so much Maslow. Rogers actually was a brilliant researcher.
Hmm.
Most people don't really grasp what he was doing, like right before World War II, just after World War II, that changed the face of psychotherapy and education, and just interpersonal relations in the workplace. Like, and that was
Yeah.
largely research driven, not a priori. Like, here's my idea, and now I'm just going to push it out there in the marketplace. No, we're going to collect data, apply the scientific method, and then learn from it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you got to think that like this humanistic stream of practice and thought, it really begins to blossom in the 50s and 60s, kind of goes off the track there in the 70s. It happens. But, you know, within the world of psychology, there were really only two broad streams: the behaviorist approach, which was highly positivistic, and frankly, alienated most humane values, right? The things that make us human: poetry, the arts,
Hmm.
music, love. If it's not, if you can't measure it, and if it's not external, then behaviorism doesn't touch it.
Right.
And, you know, Freudian psychoanalysis, wherever, you know, that's the other branch that again, if you really look at it, is highly deterministic and biased by a 19th century view of materialistic science and scientism. So, as far as I hear what you're saying, like there's a heavy focus on process, but I think that had more to do with getting away from values and ways of being and doing things that had frankly gotten away from being truly human. Maslow comes from a Jewish background. I mean, same thing with Rogers. There, even between those two gentlemen, there are very highly personalistic presuppositions. And what I mean by that is there is a Judeo-Christian personalism, an ideology there, a dogma that underlies, and influences what they're thinking. It's often very crypto. It's underneath the surface. It gets distorted. If I look at it from an Orthodox Christian perspective, it doesn't necessarily always meet up where I would like it to. However, it's much closer.
Well, say that in more. What does that mean in practical terms for the lay people? For me, I don't know if I really connect with that. What do you mean?
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
What does that mean? So, what we're really talking about is what a man can't be and what a person can be and what a person cannot be, right? Like, we all have inherent potential that's unactualized. And there is this process by which what is inherent and possible comes into reality, right? So their focus is definitely on this process of how do we get from where we are to what we can be.
Kind of getting to what Kate was saying about purpose. Right?
It draws in. It's certainly the actualization of purpose, right? Yeah. And I think we all, going back to Jim's part, like there is a universal purpose, right? Like the universal purpose is to know God, right? But even more, but Jim's reference to the Last Judgment there, to stand in front of our Maker, to stand in front of our Redeemer, and to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. That's a purpose.
Jay says there are likely internal and external success, temporal and eternal success, and that's kind of what came to my mind when I heard when Jim said that about there is an eternal success, and how much of it I do believe it is connected with our temporal success, but are they completely the same thing? And then John Chrisman says, maybe we need to rethink success. Happiness should be associated towards success. People are miserable because they let society tell them what success is. I think that's a good point. What frames are?
Yeah, there's the issue of framing, and again, like we discussed earlier, this issue of measuring, right? Like, and what do I measure or benchmark against? Do I, is it keeping up with the Joneses? Where the benchmark is my neighbor versus, am I a better person? Am I a more intelligent person, a holier person, a more, a person of integrity or charity, love than I was yesterday?
I've got a thought about that. Scott says, wouldn't we need universal agreement as to what is meaningful in order to form ideas of what could be universally considered success?
Yeah,
and that's kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I do like that notion of human potential, because that's a broad enough construct that it can encompass the difficulties surrounding meaning and values, because meaning and values is going to be highly contextualized. It's going to vary from person to person, place to place, culture to culture, time to time. And everyone, even within their own value structure, has a priority of values.
Yeah.
Some people value in the ranking of values, they're going to be different by individual and by culture.
You know what it makes me think of though is, to Scott's comment, and even a little bit what we'll get to what Jay was responded. But there's something when I get. Remember when we went camping?
Mm.
I feel like when you get in nature, and I've been trying to sort of develop this ever since that time we spent out in the woods. Is I feel like there is the one of the reasons that I love getting out in nature is an alignment with something that is tangible, and also it's almost like there is a universal standard there, in the sense that you look at nature, and nature is a perfect example of success, in the sense that everything is working together and producing and growing, and is creative, and is functioning on a level that is not everything, right? There are some things that, there's disruption, right? But for the most part, to me that's the best example. And that's why I love going out in the woods and spending time out there, because it's the best example of success to me.
It's okay. Tell me more. What do you mean by, like, in that place
Well,
and in that time? Like,
yeah.
how
I
is
feel,
that successful?
well, because, and maybe this is only personal to me, I
Yeah.
doubt it though. And that is that it has been unadulterated. It is unadulterated by the mechanism of man, first of all, for the most part, right? It's the deeper you get out in the woods, and therefore their systems, the ecosystem is the purest. So it's a pure. You when you get into the deepest of the woods, untouched, as much as possible by man, you get to experience systems of success. Systems that are successful, I'll say, successful at propagating, successful at living.
They're certainly generative, right? Like
Yeah,
they're flourishing. I mean, and ideally,
flourishing.
they're
Yeah,
flourishing. They're
and
supportive. They're
and
integrated.
I wonder if there's something innately human about. I don't know. It just feels like there's something in the human life, in the concrete existence, that starts to focus more on a meta, because we're so meta in our thinking about thinking. We start building things that create new man-made systems that have their own goals for success. Whereas the success that you see out in nature is God-made. Does
Yeah,
that make any sense?
it makes sense to you. I'm working
I
on it
don't.
making
That's not
sense to
necessarily
me.
true.
I hear what you're saying though about systems and
Yeah.
um,
So, like, functioning systems of life. So, kind of what you said about generative systems of life. Generative systems that.
well, I mean, and that's ideally that's what communities do. It's what families do. It's what friends do. It's what companies do.
Yeah.
Is to be situated systemically in such a way that it produces life, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's only when systemically that we're not situated to produce life that, well, things go very poorly. And history is replete with lessons about that.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we can only muck it up so much. Like, I think one thing to be grateful for is the fact that human systems are um, highly adaptable, um, and resilient. right? Like we adjust, even when we're messing things up, we tend to adjust,
Right.
even if it's just enough to keep things going. But I'm going to push us back to success. Like maybe we've kind of danced and dallied in the broad world, but no, I mean like I'm just trying to think through for myself, like how do I measure success, and do I even?
Yeah.
And I'm certainly
Well,
not one.
while you're thinking about that, real
You
quick,
think about
Jay
that,
Nass says,
Jay.
so having a successful journey or experience is
Mm-hmm.
more important than actually reaching a successful destination? Question mark. So Scott,
Maybe, unless you're
you
a mountain
might say,
climber, like
you
is it a
might say that
successful journey if
success
you
is
don't
about
get to the top?
reality testing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. Jay comes back to reality a lot, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What are the most real things? What are the most meaningful things? In this way, we might measure the most successful things. Success will be different for different people based on their aims, their reason, their reso. Success is about their I don't know, is having a successful journey. Okay, well, let's get personal. You and I. What? You like I did that?
That was good. I
little
like that.
transition.
Yeah, because I'm
What?
working on a
Yeah.
little screen, and now you're like really big on the screen.
What? How do we define success? How do you define success, Joshua? Because I mean, I think I bring up success so much because I really don't know. I'm really, that is my journey right now.
Yeah, the journey to finding success. Maybe not even achieving success, but just finding.
No.
Oh,
Defining.
defining success.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like I tend to think I'm pretty self-referential. In other words, like I am my own measuring stick
Yeah.
to some degree and in some ways. Like I really don't care about keeping up with the Joneses. I drive a beat up pickup truck. Don't care.
I mean, in some ways, right?
In some ways.
Most ways.
I mean, I don't really care. Um,
I don't know, it's a pretty snazzy little coat you got there.
yeah, I do like to be snazzily dressed. I dress, but that's because I like it.
Okay.
And I get how feathers work. So I don't know. We could talk about clothing. We can go back and talk about wardrobe some other time.
Yeah, we've already talked about
We'll
clothing.
talk
We'll
about
talk
that.
about it again later.
More.
But success, how would you define success?
No, here lately, I do. I think, being able to take account morally, financially, spiritually, and to be able to measure myself and see if today I've grown, that I've progressed, that I've refined, that I've purified more than I was yesterday. That to me would be a success personally. But I think there are other ways that, if I look at any of the other areas of my life, my personal, my friendships, my marriage, my family life, my place in my community, like there, to me, I do want to narrow the scope down to being something measurable that's you can get your hands around, and
yeah. Well, okay, so to that point, the thing that I've struggled with, when there's a part of me that wants to keep redirecting to success needs to be in spiritual terms. And the difficulty I have with that is the intangible. If I continue to define success in spiritual terms, it can be increasingly difficult to give not necessarily behavioral, because we have behavioral dictums for that, but it just, on the day-to-day basis, I lose touch with a real like connection to creativity. We talked a little about creativity,
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, there are other aspects, right? Of am I bringing into the world the things that I wish to create?
Yeah.
Am I being the person? Am I being the neighbor that I desire to be? Like, I mean, really, like, I can say that if I could have one word on my tombstone to describe me, yeah, there's lots of things I suppose I could hope for, but at best, on a practical level, I just want the word helpful thrown on there. He was real helpful. That's a good goal for me. I can hit that. I can achieve that goal. But no, I mean, like we talked before we got on, like there are things that I would like to produce. I'd like to create, and the way to measure that is at some point in the future, not today. Like right now, as I measure it, my success level there is pretty low. Like approaching zero. Like I've got a lot of ideas, but
it's low in comparison, right? Like, are you? I mean, relative to what? Relative to what do you mean?
So if I want to create services are a little bit more difficult.
Yes, we've talked about that.
Yeah, but products,
very little glory in services.
Yeah, I mean, like it's real simple as far as like if you want to if you want to be a website builder, the way that you are successful at being a website builder is you build websites. And so at some point you have a portfolio of websites that one has built, right?
Yeah.
If you're an artist, if you're a writer, if you're a craftsperson, like the measure of success, even on its lowest level, is creating stuff. I'm trying to remember where I'd heard it, but this notion of if someone says, well, I'm a writer or I'm struggling with my writing, well, show me your bad writing. Show me all the bad writing that you did before you got good at it. Show me all your bad, cabinet making before you got good at it.
Yeah.
Show me your bad websites before you got really good at it. So, I mean, that's an area where I think we can measure some success if it's goal attainment, but even spiritually, like I know we've talked about, spirituality. Like the older I get, the more I'm like, I think as Americans, we are really prone to define spirituality as far as dogma, as far as like beliefs that we hold, as opposed to things that we do. And things that we do is measurable. And of course we can get really trapped in that world as well by pride. Well, look how much time I spend reading the Bible, or look how much time I spend praying, or look how much time I volunteer at the soup kitchen. That can be a trap, but that can also be a pretty decent way to evaluate ourselves, to get off our butts and do something. But money, like money is a very spiritual thing.
Whoa, what?
Oh, that's what I just said. Money is a very spiritual thing. Because we can
say more. You've either said too much or too little.
Because we can measure what we do with it.
Yeah.
We can measure what we do with it.
I agree.
And then we can begin to evaluate our motivations, and we can at that point begin to ask ourselves, who and what do we truly love?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I remember a point in which Chan and I looked at our budget. And that's a horrific thing to do if you're like me. And
if you're like most Americans, let's just put it like this. If you're like most Americans.
Well, and so we looked at our budget and noticed that we were spending inordinate amounts on fast food. And realized that it hadn't even entered into our minds. We love fast food.
Yeah.
What? We love it too. We're worshiping fast food. And to your point, it's there in the budget. It's
It shows up.
obvious
Yeah.
to see.
Well, this I'll, I'll share this because I think that now that you brought it up like that, before I got into the counseling field, I worked as a paralegal, and one of the kind of niche markets that we worked in were high net value, high net worth divorces.
Oof.
So we're talking, doing divorces for the 1%, right? But one of the things that you end up having to do, at least I ended up having to do as paralegal, is combing through other people's credit card statements and bank statements. And so I got really good at learning, like, what stuck out, like what really told, what was speaking to me about this person that was unique, that showed up in their credit card and bank statements. And you're absolutely right, though. Like, if you list off everything that you spend money on, or even don't spend money on, obviously saving, I mean, that's going to say something. We're going to learn something about ourselves from that behavior. No, it's telling, and it is spiritual. It is a reflection of the state of our souls.
Yeah. Well, to that very point, do you remember Jason Cooper at all?
No.
Jason Cooper.
But I'm a visual guy, and the screen is really small, so I can't see pictures.
It's hard.
Jason
Cooper says, same problem, Judah McNeil, but it is whiskey. And cheers to that. Josh and I can attest to, I've narrowed my whiskey consumption down to Wednesdays. That is my only. Oh, sorry, Josh. Sorry, Jason.
I do love a dram. I do enjoy a dram.
Hey, we're with you, but it can get it can be quite a costly habit. But to your point, so also let's hit the chat real quick here.
Chat's blowing up.
Well, first, I think Jay said, well, fundamentally, I suspect I define success by whether or not I achieved my aims. I think that's a pretty good.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. And Jim Pass says, because we are universally different from the point of our creation, it follows that our individual success will also be universally different. Most people don't even stop to consider whether they are on the ladder of success. Some discover early. Some discover late in life. And Beth Copeland says, hi there. Hi. Hello, Beth Copeland. Good. Glad to have you and Jason and so many new viewers tonight. I'm not sure why. Oh, worries, buddy. It's triple the cost in Canada. Well, I'm actually drinking Canadian whiskey right now.
Oh, goodness.
That's
unfortunate
triple the
for
cost.
Canadians.
That's interesting.
Is that some kind of like healthcare tax, possibly, or
could be?
You got to pay for
Tell us
universal
in the
healthcare?
comment section, Jason. Is that what? Why is it
it
triple the cost?
Would that make like cigars like 10 times the cost or something? I don't know.
What would be more deadly, cigars or
whiskey? I don't know. That's a good question.
Not for us to discuss tonight. Success. Now, but there is something in that. So how is it that I so easily mistake a drink of whiskey for success? And maybe there is a modicum of success, in that. But often get distracted by such shallow success that may be detrimental to my overall success, the layers of success.
Well, I mean, to go back to Jay's, maybe to turn Jay's definition to a metaphor, like success is hitting what I aim at. There's
Yeah.
certainly the possibility that I'm not aiming high enough.
Touche. Can I tell you that
But
well, hold that thought. Put a pin in that
you were gonna
because
pin it.
wait, Ontario. He says Ontario government is the only seller. Socialism, baby. Oh gosh.
Well, yeah, you got a lock on the market.
Jason, coming
One
around
would,
to my
one would
thinking.
think that like Canadians would, there'd be like a pretty rockin' moonshine market up there if the government owns everything.
You'd think, like they have more space, right, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Okay, so here's my biggest difficulty with success is how I measured success had most, so for most of my life, I'm just in my reflection these days, I'm realizing that how I measured success had greatly to do with the opposite sex, had greatly to do with dating and attraction, had greatly to do with winning over, this girl or that girl, and actually ultimately in the back of my mind, and not even actually in the forefront of my mind, most of my early life, I was trying to create a family. I really saw success as creating a family. I saw the family I came from. I wanted that, right?
Mm.
And then I created it. No, I didn't create it. We created it. It came together. And I realized I still have like 50 years left. What do I do now? Like I forsake, I still had spiritual aspirations and what have you. But I never had any kind of like thought to, always thought, and part of this was a mix between my spiritual aspirations and my familial aspirations. And I think it is a problem for evangelicals is that there is an idolatry of the family to some respect, right?
Maybe in some quarters.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not going to, I paint with a broad brush.
Yeah, that's a broad.
But
I would say that might be a broad brush. Now, in the quarters that you and I live, I think that can be very much a temptation.
yeah, well, it certainly was for me. Everything was about family, and then I got the family, and it's funny how much a desire for success motivates us. Like I was super motivated, and I would say super successful. If success comes down to what Jay talks about, accomplishing your personal goals, like I look back now and say, I got I got everything I wanted. But to your point, I don't know if I was broad enough or circumspect enough to think beyond those goals. And that's the problem with goal attainment success.
It's ongoing, right? I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
so it, the quiver's got more arrows than just one, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's more targets, to shoot at.
Yeah. However, though, as humans, we start, we build these like, we talk a lot as psychologists about these like these pathways that we build because of ongoing behavior, the behavior that,
Sure.
that causes this ongoing, it shapes us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Real
We
quick.
create habits and we create routines.
Yeah. Kate says, when I lived in Scotland, medicine from the hospital not delivered to my house for my baby. Wait, did I read that wrong? From the hospital got delivered. I'm sorry, got delivered in whiskey boxes. Interesting.
Huh.
So, that's how prevalent whiskey is in
They
Scotland. I
had
guess.
so many empty boxes they gave it to the hospital.
Jim Pass says, could you then become a successful crook? And see, there's the rub.
Well, of course you can be a successful crook.
Yes, absolutely. Ecclesiastes presents this from Scott.
You can be a foolish
Perhaps the
crook.
most interesting and helpful lens through which we view success. Ecclesiastes. Say more, Scott. What do you think? What do you think he's talking about there about
preacher.
Ecclesiastes and being?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, there's a place for success, right? Like there's a time and place for what we're talking about, and that at least within American culture, hustle culture, success becomes a god. It becomes an idol.
Yeah.
I guess my struggle is that okay, that is true, and it can be helpful to be able to pick a target and hit it, and to be able to evaluate: did I hit it well? Was it the right target? Um, and that's when I go back to like potential. Like, am I living to my potential?
Yeah.
Like the parable of the talents. Essentially, it's kind of like we've all been given certain gifts, and what we're ultimately held accountable to is what we did with them, and that's different for everyone.
Interesting. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Success being defined in terms of how well did we use the gifts that we were given the tools, the weapons that if you give somebody a bow and arrow, they're successful if they hit the target.
Sure. And that goes back to purpose, but I think the struggle there is that there is this aspect of struggle, of searching, of our own
The process.
desire process. It's a process that God invites us to co-create with Him, right? Like,
Yeah.
There is this aspect of freedom. There is this aspect of uniqueness that if we don't step into the arena, if we don't step out and try, we never know. Right?
Yeah.
It's lost potential. It's lost opportunity. It's a wasting of gifts. It's us taking the talents and hiding them in the dirt, because we knew that the taskmaster was, he was expecting something from us. But it goes back to nothing. If there's nothing risked, then there's nothing gained. And the thing that just always strikes me about that parable is the one that really catches it is the guy that's, that holds back.
Yeah.
The parable doesn't. It'd been interesting if there was a fourth person that was like, I tried, and I lost your money. Like, what happens to that
That's
guy?
true. There isn't
that guy. I would love to know about that guy, because most of the days
That's usually me, right?
That's me, right? Like, yeah, I mean, I tried, and
Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Maybe that means that, over the expanse of time, there are no failures.
Well,
nobody tries and fails.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Ultimately, yes, it's from a Christian perspective. I mean, that's the idea of salvation, right? Like, ultimately, no one fails. And we have a God that calls us to risk.
Yeah.
And the one that's censured is the one that holds back.
Yes.
So, I mean, so again, like maybe Scott's found what he's going to say about Ecclesiastes, but as I think about it, like, again, like this is an aspect of what Jay's talking about. Like, it's not about goal fulfillment so much as it is the relationship, like who we are as a person in the journey,
Right.
like how we develop and grow and change. But again, this is always in relationship with other human beings, and it's in relationship with God.
I think that's important, though. I think this is getting closer. This is filling it out. Jason says, "Uh-oh, giving me ideas, guys. New goals. Shoot for the moon."
Well,
More ways
yeah.
than one, right? Moonshine. Start bootlegging.
Well,
Seriously though,
shoot for the moon, you might hit the stars. Is something that I've said a lot. And I can't remember where
I
I heard
like that.
but it's
You
true.
might be a star.
Aim high, you'll hit something. Even if you miss aiming high, right? You're gonna hit something.
Yeah.
Um,
Jordan is the one Michael Jordan, probably who I think Michael Jordan is somebody who I have modeled success on longer than any other person in my adult life. In my life as a kid, I guess, mostly. He said, "You miss 100. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." So he continues to say. Jason continues to say, seriously though, constantly looking at where you can strive and achieve helps us not to be idle, but at the same time, resting in the fact that God is molding us spiritually is key. You can't drive yourself to spiritual perfection. That is the road to pride and behavior modification. Christianity, in my humble opinion. He said that. I think he said that right when you were talking about the weapon, the tool. How successful are you, the tool that you're given? And then Scott, I think this is good. Also, the parable of the talents is an excellent way to look at it. By the way, I mentioned Ecclesiastes, thinking of it in the most positive way. It provides perspective. The book is not saying it's saying do not strive to be successful. It's not saying don't strive to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a time and place for everything under the sun.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess this is the order.
And that's the thing. I mean, like hustle culture, again, I think something that we're exposed to frequently in American society is this notion of hustle culture. Like you just need to work, as if that's the only thing that we exist for.
Scott also says, I'm sorry, back to the parable of the talents, withdrawing your service is a great way to be unsuccessful. I like that. But the work thing, here's the thing, getting back to nature and getting back to Ecclesiastes, like being able to identify the systems, that God is creating around us, like family, work. I heard, I bring him up a lot, but so be it. Jordan B. Peterson was talking about people don't have mental illness. What they have, for the most part, and some have mental illness, but for the most part, when people come in to see him, he said what he finds is that they have an inability to maintain too many systems. Too much is going on. There is just it's not pressure. Pressure is man is built to deal with pressure. It's the various amounts of pressure in various capacities that that causes a person pain, causes them disruption, and the ability to really focus and think, and they think of themselves as and even even if you think about it, that's relative to the person's ability to deal with multiple, however many pressures they're able to, right? Like if you have a limited capacity, then you can only deal with one or two at a time, maybe just one, right? Just one. And yeah,
just one. No, I think there's some wisdom to that. There are certain, I think, limits to how much pressure um, people can experience, though a lot of that, in my opinion, is often self-induced. And we find
Amen.
ourselves in multiple systems in which we attempt to exert control over things in which we have no control. And that is, well, rather frustrating, and causes a lot of emotional distress, which
Yeah.
leads to a lot of dysfunction.
Yeah.
And no, there's certainly wisdom in, well, how about we simplify some things here? Let's get back to basics. Um, let's
Wow.
clarify what's really important to us. What are the nails that we need to hit?
Yeah.
Um,
Goes back to what we were talking about before. Maybe it was last week or 2 weeks ago or the time before. Trying to control things that are out of our reach, right? Politics and sports. These are things that we have no control over, and yet we put so much pressure on ourselves about.
or
Like, why?
or yeah. Um,
So I do. I'll say I do. Yes. Other things too, right? Like, I wonder if that is an aspect of our Christianity or religion, depending on what religion. Putting certain things on ourselves that we're unable to really control. For example,
hmm,
other people's behavior. You know,
hmm,
I feel like as a Christian, sometimes I worry so much about other people's behavior. I mean, even to the point of my own kids. Like I've had to grapple with the aspect of my inability to really control them.
hmm.
And maybe I now
That's
that's
our
not to
struggle,
say that's not to say that I don't have shaping responsibilities there.
right?
Definitely shaping for Chan and I. There's shaping responsibilities and all kinds of character formation there. However, when it comes to control, I have to keep reminding myself, you know, and as it gets broader out, my brother, my sister, my mom, my dad, these are not people. The further you go out in the spectrum, the less I have control of. Really, maybe I'd say less, probably like none,
None.
none.
Zero. Uh, yeah, zero control. Yeah, certainly the ability to influence and shape and model, um,
Yeah,
but control. Yeah, control is generally an illusion, or more
yeah,
more accurately, a delusion. We are deluding ourselves, which just creates frustration, right? Because we attempt to exert some amount of control
yeah,
and it doesn't happen. And then we get upset about it. Though the most dangerous thing in our culture, though, is where, in our attempts to exert control, and this is true for men, not so much for women, but, speaking as a man to other men,
yeah.
um, you know, at some point, that moves from frustration to violence, whether it's
Yes,
coercion, whether it's some form of
yes,
manipulation or coercion or
yes.
outright violence. um just look on the news.
That's where anger, I think, I was taught early in my education that anger is not so much an emotion, but a behavior based on defense of your personal values, your worth, essential needs,
Yes.
and and it's like if you think you can't control those, the moment the feeling, really, anger is the feeling. I'm out of control. I can't control
well,
this. I
well
need to control this.
yeah, I make a distinction there between anger and aggression, because you
Say more.
can be angry
Yeah.
and not be aggressive.
True.
um
Be angry and sin not, right?
exactly. I mean, again, going back to the psalmist, David, be angry and sin not. In fact, that's actually an assertive command to be angry, to reflexively be angry, like to turn our anger back on ourselves, because there's an aspect of the emotion of anger that can be spurred on by injustice. It's probably like truly righteous anger. There's the potential for cleansing,
a conflict between righteousness and like that disruption of righteousness, right?
Yeah,
a conflict between what should be and isn't.
Well, the most and this is the hard thing that gets. This is we're talking about being human, a mature humanity, and I'm not saying I am one of these people. Would, in the face of injustice, the most appropriate emotion is anger. It's anger.
Yeah.
However, that can very easily get out of control. Just that's what a riot is. This last year we saw a lot of anger towards injustice and unrighteousness that just went awry. Now, what the scriptures tell us to do is actually to turn that upon ourselves, because the only person we have any control over is ourselves.
Say more about that, though. Where does the scripture say that?
What?
That to turn that anger upon ourselves, because I didn't realize that until you just said that. Turn your anger on yourself.
No, be angry.
What are you referring to?
Let me go back. That's what's on.
Be angry and sin not. I think that's key. So it's saying. So you're saying you're making the inference that it's to be angry at ourselves. How? Why? What is it about that?
So, without looking it up, one that's based off of a traditional interpretation, understanding of that psalm verse.
Okay, that's important.
In that,
good.
The emotion of anger, what's often referred to like in ascetical theology as the incensive power, like that emotion has a role and a place. More often than not, we use it wrongly, right? We use it to lash out at people.
Yeah.
As opposed to if we flip it back on ourselves, if we apply that emotion to our own unrighteousness, now we have a very powerful emotional approach at repentance. Like, it's really easy. I mean, because that's the thing. Like, if cold reason alone doesn't get us very far.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, in Western culture, we've really only in the last, not very recent past, started to appreciate, thanks to neuroscience, the role of emotions in thinking, the role of emotions in social life.
Yeah.
But this use of emotion within sanctification, this is nothing new to Christians if you go back to the church, to the life of the church in the first 1,000 years. This is like old hat.
The key here is self-control, right? Know this, my James 1:19. Know this, my beloved brothers. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Like, these are things, the anger is turned back on yourself. From what I hear from you, is it's turned back on yourself to wake you up and say, whoa, disrupt you out of your like lull of I'm the best, to like, go ahead.
And it's success. I mean, like, from a spiritual, it's a tool for spiritual success, as far as learning to hate our own sin. There is a place to hate. Like, going back to Ecclesiastes, there is a place for anger.
but it's brief, right? It has a specific purpose.
It does, and like all emotions, like they they're transient, right?
Yeah.
They don't stay forever, and no, and this also isn't an invitation to shame oneself.
No,
Um,
but it's sort of it is to quicken, right? Like
oh
anger is
yeah,
good at
oh to
quickening
certainly
us.
invigorate, right? Yeah, to quicken,
Yes,
to heat.
invigorate. That's good. Yeah.
You know, it's got it. We have to have these emotions to really get us anywhere.
Why
And
do
that's
you
part of
think
being embodied. That's just being a human. It's how we're created.
the regular thing that it says in the Bible is to be slow? Is to slow down your anger. What is that
Well,
about?
sure. Well, I mean, but again, we're talking about different uses of anger, right? So
Mm,
if I'm slow to be angry, if I'm slow to be wrathful with my neighbor, that's certainly a virtue. Um,
mm.
but be angry, but do not sin. And what you
Mm.
resolve in your heart to do, calmly reconsider while resting upon your beds. Offer a
Ooh.
sacrifice of righteousness and place your hope in the Lord. Um, Psalm 4. Eh, but that particular verse, I mean, within, I guess, the spiritual masters, and I don't even like using that term.
Mm.
Like that particular psalm verse has traditionally been interpreted again is we bring it back in on ourselves, um,
Yes.
because I mean, talking
Proverb
about,
real quick. Proverbs 16:32. Whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and
yeah,
he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. Better is he that who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. To me,
and
that gets to what you're talking about. Put that anger on yourself.
well, and that's also a
Reevaluate what's going on
parallelism.
with you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a parallel. It's a parallelism. That's a couplet in Hebrew. So I
Hmm.
mean, those are meant to contrast with each other.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
The
talking
slow,
about anger. Sorry,
yeah,
talking
anger.
about
Okay,
anger.
well, anger and success. So for me, for men, anger and success, there's, passion and success are very important for men.
Hmm.
Um,
It can be.
there is no success without self-determination, and there is no self-determination without some kind of motivation, right? Nobody is self-determined spontaneously. Like, I think I need some self motivation, right? I think I need some self self determine. I'm going to determine myself right now. Judah, do this. No, it doesn't happen. You need an impetus. I'll say I need an impetus, right?
Well, yeah, we certainly need some motivation, and that comes in a lot of places. It can come from others, right? I mean, it can come from ourselves.
Yeah,
I keep everything moving.
I mean, like to over spiritualize things and cut pleasure out of it, I think is to miss the heart of man, um, the reality, I'll say, of man, in the sense that I need something that will trigger my passion to do something, right? Like you can tell me to do something and I'll obey and do it,
Mhm.
but to do it successfully, I need to be emboldened, right? I need to be
Well,
impassioned.
or just enough courage to start.
Sometimes it just takes enough courage to start. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
But
that's the thing. Like I hear what you're saying. It certainly helps if you have a lot of passion. Um, However, what I've learned, my experience has been that life includes a lot of drudgery, and that drudgery is
yeah.
a certain part of the journey. Um, and
Mm.
and that may take That's oftentimes when things are passionless.
The mundane.
They do become mundane. However, it's about then we learn about persistence. Then we learn about patience. Um, then we learn about delayed gratification. Um,
Because not all life is about success.
well, it may take a little bit of time for the arrow to hit the target.
Yeah.
It might be a long flight. It's got a little hang time.
Yeah. Takes time for a tree to grow. I think one of the most profound things that I ever heard, my brother brought it to my attention. There's only two times to do things, to accomplish things. There's, oh no, what did he say? He said it in terms of he put it in real concrete terms. There's only 2 times you can plant a tree, or you can have a tree. 30 years from now, or right now. Like, you can either put a seed in right now, or in 30 years you can also experience trees, what have you. But
yeah, the future tree.
yeah. Well, Jason's got to go. I got to go. It's been an hour.
We've had a wonderful time together.
Also, Jim passes Proverbs 29:11. A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control. It doesn't say not to be angry. It says
keeps under
control that anger.
Right? It says, the wise man's doing something different with his anger. He's not spewing it everywhere.
Right. I mean, to your point, it's about being able to think, who can I control here? Can I control my kids? Can I control my wife? Can I control my dad? Can I control my boss? No. Can I control me? Much more than those people. I don't know how much, but I can to a certain extent. More than them.
Our control over behavior is nearly absolute.
I don't know about... you mean our own behavior?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that.
It's possible. Potential.
If that were true...
Potential.
Then everybody would be everything they wanted to be, right?
Maybe.
I mean...
But see, that's all. I mean, so like being something in the world is certainly contingent upon other circumstances. But having control over ourselves, right? Like having control over my words.
Do you have absolute control of your words?
I think I could.
I don't think you could.
I think it's
I don't
possible.
think I could. Maybe you could. I don't think it's possible for me. I'll say this, like, I don't think I have the ability, like, just by experience. Mm-hmm. I have a great amount. I have like, I think I could get to like 90%.
Yeah.
At this point I have maybe 50%, but when I see a piece of cake and I say, you should not eat that, Judah. And I eat it. Yeah. What is that? Yeah. Like, what is that? That's not control.
That's not control.
So who is controlling me?
Yeah.
Oh. And so that's something we could talk about in the future. Like, what does control mean when it comes to ourselves?
Oh, So what is self-control? And what is it not?
Is self-control?
Ooh. Yeah. What are impulses and what are impulsions and compulsions and?
Yeah, because I mean, when the master is the impetuous one, what do you do then? How do we control the master in our bodies and our minds and our impetus?
Or do we? Or is that another area where we learn the distinctions between what we can and cannot control?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Well,
that's a deep well.
That is a deep well. something that we may talk about in
I've
future
played in the
discussions.
kiddie. Let's just say we'll say it's a deep lake or that's a deep pool, and I know I've played in the kiddie pool. That's about it.
Scott says I'm going to sit that one out.
Me too, Scott.
Something though, as we get deeper, something to think about. I will be talking to Scott. Scott, you're gonna when we talk. So I'm not a show. I will have him on here, probably next Monday,
Tune in.
and
Be there, be square.
maybe even Jim. Jim says your desires control you. Augustine says you always choose according to the strongest desire within you. Our freedom consists in surrendering our desires to God.
Yeah, Augustine.
I mean, there it is.
There is some there. I will. I appreciate that quote because I will concede that, in my opinion, that is a half truth.
What is a half truth?
The Augustine is correct that we concede to, our strongest passions. But I would counter that the missing element isn't surrender, but rather the development of strong passions.
Time, right?
Well, not
Like
time.
in the moment, in any particular moment, our strongest passion, but we have the advantage of time. We can affect the future.
We can affect the future, but like the development of passions, the development of our desires, and even more appropriately, the development of our affections, our loves, is something that is created in the past.
Yeah.
So so there's this anticipation of temptation, and in the anticipation of temptation, what we're really called to do is to develop affections, to increase our love, to increase our desire for God, to increase our love for our neighbor.
For the good things. Yeah.
So I mean, from a positive perspective, that's
yeah.
So
that's
and there's probably
I think
and
that's
Augustine
important.
and Augustine, he adds, he fleshes some of those things out in other places.
Yeah.
But, sorry. Thank you for that.
Let's come back to that. Let's come back. Thank you, Jim. And Jim says, "Have a great controlled week, guys." And the same to you, Jim. And
we'll keep it under wraps.
Scott and Jason and Kate and Jay.
Where did Kate come from?
John.
From her mother.
And so many people. Let's see. We have likes from Charles and John J. So it's interesting. Our first two likes were from Jay Nass and Jim Pass. At first I thought, did two people? No, they're different people. Jay Nass, Jim Pass. All right. Good night, everybody. And we'll see you next week, hopefully. If the creek don't rise,
Lord willing,
people don't
the
die.
creek don't rise.